topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. And my team and I at Gusto Now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building high-performance teams, inspirational leaders, and nurturing managers. And did you know that inspired employees outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration is good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Getting into today's program, we have with us today Bill Zujewski. He's the founder and CEO of Good Life, a company dedicated to helping individuals design balanced, fulfilling lives through the ZenScore system, mobile app, and his book, What's Your Life Score? He's also the CEO of Momentex, a next-generation social networking app for live events, which he launched in 2024. We'll be talking about his work and the components of his system to help you move from mistaking motion for progress and learning to learning. So he joined us today from Boston. I'm delighted to have you on, Bill. Welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Elise. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited as well.
Finally, I get to talk about this. I loved your book. This is so beautiful what you did. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to read. And I also loved the app, Bill. It was so cool to navigate your Good Life app. And so listeners and viewers, as we're talking, when you look for his work, Good Life, the app, etc., it has 2 eyes in it. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But want to just start by talking a little bit about, you've dedicated yourself to something very specific, Bill. You're all about helping people achieve balance, purpose, and happiness. So usually that kind of dedication and focus usually comes from somewhere. What's the story? Where did this come from?
Sure. So, and yeah, that's my kind of, I come from the software world, and Good Life is kind of I've created a company of software with a purpose. My purpose most of my life has been my wife, my 4 kids who are all in their 20s now, and helping my family and friends. I've been pretty lucky to do well in life. So I've always had this philosophy in life of living a holistic life, but starting with the father, husband, son, and working in that hierarchy. And I've been lucky enough to also maintain that balance, but also succeed in the business world, in the software world, which happened to be, again, a fortunate place to be the last 25 years, right? Software eats the world.
Sounds good to me. Well, let's hear a little bit about this. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing at Good Life and also Momentex. What are these entities about?
Yeah, we'll probably let's focus on Good Life today. It's because it's more aligned with, working with purpose. So let me go back to this little tool that I created for myself 20 plus years ago. I know a lot of people out there probably at the end of the year do their New Year's kind of resolutions, right? And I, as an engineer, I started as an engineer. I had this little spreadsheet where I would look at like 11 rows in this little spreadsheet I created. How am I doing with my career? How am I doing with my wife? How am I doing with my family? How am I doing with my fitness, my weight, my net worth, right? And I would score myself 0 to 10. It'd be just like companies have corporate dashboards, right? I created this little life dashboard, and it worked well for me. It just forced me to kind of self-reflect on all the areas in life and not over-focus on one or the other. And I did it for years. And then I started seeing when my kids started hitting their 20s, I started seeing them starting to lose balance, not showing up for family gatherings or being stressed at work. So I started sharing my little tool with them, and they kind of liked it. And we started using language like, hey, your leisure score is like a 5 this month. Fix that. So then I started thinking maybe there's something to this. So most of my career has been in heading marketing for large software companies. And in my 50s, I started getting into entrepreneurship. And that's where I am with Good Life now. I started this a year ago. I'm the solopreneur. I've hired contracts to build this little personal scorecard. And I'm seeing if it could be useful to whether it's people, coaches, or heads of people of companies. Here's a tool to give individuals to help lead a balanced, purposeful life.
I want to applaud that, Bill. But one of the things that I was just thinking about as I was on my run this morning is how much of my life satisfaction and fulfillment and direction has come from being able to hear that little voice inside me that said, put your next foot on that lily pad right over there. And every time I've done that, every single time, it's led me to something bigger and more fulfilling. So I really want to applaud that you've listened to this little whisper and that you've actually done something about it. I think that's just delightful, and it's inspiring.
Yeah, I really do now. At first, like I said, I had 20. I'm not a life coach, but I am, in a way, raising 4 young professionals now that are in their 20s. So I'm coaching them, and now I'm helping their friends. So all of a sudden now, I find amazing gratification in helping that younger generation avoid the mistakes that we all made when we were in our 20s and 30s and going through the process. So I'm not sure there's a huge business here, and but I do find it super rewarding, and so far so good.
Awesome. Well, let's dive a little bit into what you've learned along the way. I thought it was fascinating and completely aligned. You do talk about in your book, you say finding purpose and living your best life has been one of your greatest challenges and rewards. And over the years, you've said you've learned that it requires constant reflection, adaptation, and change. It's not something you figure out once. It's an ongoing journey. I completely agree with that. And so you then situate 4 A's, which are the keys to the good life. Let's talk about those 4 A's.
Yeah, so I can't remember where I stole it from. So I think it was either Harvard or Stanford. So I had a science behind it. But adaptation, awareness, acceptance, and action. So adaptation, clearly the world is changing so fast. Like right now, I'm doing Instagram posts about AI. Like if you're not serious about learning how to use AI in your life and in your career, you're going to fall behind. You have to adapt, right? So A is for adapting. Awareness is where my tool comes in, which is, go through those 11 questions I have for how you feel about those 11 areas of your life, and you become more aware of that, right? And then acceptance is the next A, is seeing that score and realizing, oh my gosh, I have a 3 out of 10 here. I need to do something about that, right? And accepting that. And then the last part of my tool is the A for action. I actually have documented a playbook for life. Now, some people are cynical and say there's no playbook for life, right? But what I've done is yeah, there's things that people who are successful in their financial, part of their life, there's best practices. They pay off their credit card. They save 10% every week. They have a 401k. They have a budget, right? So I've tried to relationships. People, are good listeners. They're proactive in reaching out to friends, right? And there's these things that people who are successful in these areas do. And that's the action part, which is I've shared kind of these practices that become habits that eventually, lead to higher scores in those areas of your life. So those are the 4 A's.
I think it's tremendously helpful to have that kind of set of guidelines like that. And then on the other side of that, which I thought was really interesting, you do talk about the idea of regrets in life. And of course, Dan Pink has written a book about regrets and how they serve us when we, instead of, you can think about regrets as being a way to navigate or respond to what you actually do want in life. But you do go on to say, and I think this is really interesting, is that, and you were referencing Bronnie Ware's The 5 Regrets of the Dying, talking about some of the biggest regrets come from neglecting relationships, passion, and purpose.
Yeah, no, for sure. So again, I'm going to reference another book, coincidentally, with the same title as my company, but with One Eye Good Life, that these Harvard professors recently wrote that did a study. I don't know if you've seen the study, at least around 3,000 families over 80 years, and what attributes of their lives led to a happier, healthier, longer life. And by far, it was relationships. The people around you in those last 10, 20, 30 years of your life were the biggest factor by far. Like, they added 10 years to your life, having that right partner and people around you versus money and home and all those other factors that you strive for. So, I mean, one regret people have is not having that circle of relationships as they get older. So one of the, I have this mnemonic, help grow, for the 8 categories: health, environment, leisure, purpose, growth. R for relationship, O for occupation, W for wealth. R is probably the most important category of that wheel of life that you need to invest in to have a happy, fulfilling life. For sure. I'm a big believer in that.
Well, and you're a beautiful walking example of that. I mean, I'm a divorced person. I've been divorced for 9 years. And I do find myself envious that you have this, your wife, your 4 children. I'm very connected to my 1 daughter. But I appreciate that. So that is definitely something that's missing for me, the relationship part. On the passions and the purpose front, one thing that's been fascinating for me, Bill, is when I'm out speaking, I very often will ask people, what are you passionate about? And in that moment, they realize they do not have an answer to the question, which is when I realize that's when they need me. I know you need me.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Right?
When I rolled out the tool and I was doing study groups, my first study group was my 4 kids last year at Thanksgiving, and I forced them to sit down and take the ZenScore, and they're all almost all of them had like a 0, 1, or 2 out of 10 for purpose. Like, they haven't even thought about that. I mean, so when you're young, I said there's nothing wrong with having a short-term purpose around a career, because it's going to feed your wealth that you'll use to support a family and your partner, and then give and have other purpose, of course, of helping others and giving back, and your purpose will change over various stages of your life depending on what you need and what you can give back. So again, P is purpose is one of its own categories in the scores, right? It's that important.
Yeah, and I like how you do talk about, what is your life plan? And you say your advice is to start sketching out your dreams for the future, and then break them down into steps that you can take today. And I think that's really important. Another thing that I find when I'm speaking to audiences, Bill, is when I ask people, what's your purpose? And many people will say, I don't know. Or then they say, even worse, they kind of shirk back and say, well, that's too big for me. In other words, I don't feel like I'm capable of that, or whatever it is. And the purpose doesn't have to be huge, curing, world hunger or anything like that. It can be right in your own backyard. But I love your advice to make a plan for your dreams. If you could speak a bit to that.
Yeah, no, and it's worked for me. There's so many books been written about the secret. You are what you think, Nightingale, right? And so that you can. If I encourage my kids, my friends and family to have a vision in all these 8 areas. Like, what is their home? Are they in the suburbs? Are they in the city? Are they close to restaurants? Are they on a farm, right? Like, where do you want to be in the next 10, 20 years? Do you have kids? No kids? Are they playing sports? Are they, right? Your career, are you an executive or are you a solopreneur? Like, start to like map it out, right? Some people call it a vision board, right? But you'll be surprised how many little decisions you make day to day, week to week, are kind of self-manifested because they're aligned with this bigger vision of where you want to go over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So they just kind of help you align rather than react day to day. You know, like one example I give all the time, because I try to talk people out of making big moves to parts of the world where they have to start from scratch with no friends, no family, is be careful. Like, you're leaving behind more important things just for a paycheck. And if you had a vision of your life in New England in the suburbs with the circle of family, you know, then why are you going to LA, you know, and moving there, right? So that's just one example how sometimes our life becomes reactive to one situation and misaligned with maybe some grander plan.
What a great thing to let our listeners and viewers reflect on as we take our first break. Let's do that. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on air with Bill Zujewski. He's the founder and CEO of Good Life, a company dedicated to helping individuals design balanced, fulfilling lives through the ZenScore system, mobile app, and also his book. He's also the CEO of Momentex. We've been talking a bit about where this idea of working on a life score came from, why it's important. After the break, we're going to get into greater detail the actual categories of the life score. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As I'm dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive, they're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. One of my latest came out, it's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand today's diverse and demanding and discerning workforce, what they want and need to give their best and stay. And then I provide 22 best practices to equip you to provide that for them in your leadership and your culture. You can find my books on Amazon or my personal site, elisecortez.com. If you are just joining us, my guest is Bill Zujewski. He's the author of What's Your Life Score? A playbook for designing your best life. Such a great title, by the way, Bill. That is just so crisp and compelling. Who doesn't want that?
Thank you. All that work over the last 30, I've been in marketing for 30 years. I'm finally starting to use it up for my own benefit rather than helping corporations. Yes.
Right. Nice. Well, I want to just dig into these different categories and really bring them to life for people and listeners and viewers. As we do this, we want you to really be thinking about, where are you strong in these categories? Where do you realize, now that I hear it that way, that's definitely an area that I could work on. So let's just take it step by step. The first category is health.
Yeah, so let's start with health. Okay, so let me just for the people who haven't, which is most people, not downloaded the app yet or read the book. There's two scores. It's not too confusing. The Zen score, the word Zen is in it, so you can probably guess it's how you feel about your life, and it takes you like really 1 minute. It's 11 questions. So for health, the Zen score is I am very happy with my body, mind, health, and fitness. Right, 0 to 10. So how do you feel about your health, right? And then the life score is almost like a credit rating for life. So it gets into actually what you're doing. So it asks you questions around your diet, whether you drink alcohol or smoke, whether you're getting the right amount of sleep, whether you're doing cardio exercise, whether you hydrate. Like, so I've tried to, like, for that life score, I've taken those, and that's the physical health score. There's also a mind, mental score around how you deal with fear, self-doubt, procrastination. Like, I think total in health, there's like 20 questions of practices that, like I said, the score has almost a playbook. Like if you score low, you know why it is, because you score on hydration. It's because you're not drinking enough water, right? So the two kind of work hand in hand. See how you feel about that area. If you feel great about health and you're healthy, then you can almost not spend as much time in the life score and understand exactly how you can get your health score from, not being fit from like a 2 or 3 to an 8. But that's kind of how the two scores work, Elise.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think it's very useful and really sobering, when you look at these different things and you start to recognize, where am I out of balance? And I think that word is important, because I think we long ago gave up on the idea of work-life balance. And now it's really, I think what most people go for is work-life harmony, integration, some kind of flow, et cetera. But balance in your overall system is really, really critical. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, and real quick on that is because most people think of balance as 2 buckets, work and non-work, and I'm talking about more of an integrated balance across all 8 categories, which you called out. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's just essential. Okay, I just want to talk through each of them. So let's talk about environment next. I thought that was really interesting, and I can tell you as you share. My environment, I work from home, unless of course I'm with a client, and where I work from my home makes a big difference to my well-being, my sense of focus, my creativity, my mood. Huge. So environment.
Yeah, and so people underestimate the impact of this on their life, but you spend so much time at home. So the Zen score of how you feel about that aspect is pretty simple. I like where I live and have a place I call home, where I feel safe, can rest, relax, and enjoy company, right? So do you have that in your life? 0 to 10, that's how you feel about your home, right? But then what you want to look at, what can you do to get that, home environment score up? I think I'm looking at my little questionnaire here. There's 10 questions, right? Home, comfort, like I have a safe, comfortable place. Cleanliness, I maintain a clean, clutter-free, home environment. Safety, natural elements, I surround myself with access to natural light and fresh air. Noise, location, like I am in a place that's, I like where I live. Access to services is another one. My workspace, my commute, the weather, and then job opportunities, right? So there's 11. Those 11 things are factors and objectives you should consider in finding the perfect home environment.
So much in that, right? I mean, I live in Dallas, as I told you. I've chosen to stay near White Rock Lake. And it's 1.5 miles from me. I can run to White Rock Lake, run around it. Well, it's 9.3 miles around the whole entire thing. But I can run to the lake, spend some time running there and come back. And I get that beautiful, vital connection to nature. It's essential for me. So just as one example. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting about your book that I wanted you to speak to a bit further, when you're talking about leisure, you do talk about how Oh, sorry, that's what we're going to do next. Never mind.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Let me let you do that next. There's a couple things in specific that I really wanted to zero in on with the leisure stuff.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I think people do sometimes connect leisure to environment, but you have you're treating them separately, which I think is very useful. So let's talk about leisure next.
Yeah, so let's go to the next Zen question here. And thank you for going in order. This is making it very easy for me to kind of.
Good.
And by the way, that's why it's the engineer in me. Not a system or a framework's not for everybody, but it really does help anchor your thinking and how you organize your life. So on leisure, the question is, I plan experiences and vacations. I take time for hobbies and interests and have fun and leisure in my life, right? So it is different from home, right? It's about experiences and hobbies and interests and those aspects. And some of the things that go into the playbook for leisure is exactly that. What hobbies do you have? What outdoor activities? How much reading do you do? Do you do any mindfulness or restfulness type of activities? Do you socialize? Do you do digital detox? Do you go on vacations? Do you do a spa or some kind of self-care activity? And do you have play and fun in your life, right? So those are kind of the best practices for having leisure in your life. And it's so important to stay refreshed and have joy in your life. Like, why are we even here if there's no joy in experiencing life, right? So important.
I gotta believe that across the board, that one gets pretty low scores for a lot of people. I gotta believe. People aren't taking their vacations. They're worried about, what happens if they do take vacations, et cetera. But when you look at all these different things that benefits reducing stress, improving mental health, enhancing creativity. And I know, when I ask people what lights you up, and people are like, I don't remember the last time I felt lit up. But then you go on to something interesting about the brainwave functions when we're in these different states, which I think is really, really, really interesting. And so you talk about how there's 4 different states that you talk about. So when we're in beta wave, that's when we're active and focused. That's our working mindset. Can you say a bit more about, is that like our like this is our daily sort of place to be, or was that our
Yeah. So and I'm no neuroscientist for sure, but I've read enough that I'm interested as an engineer, interested in this notion that that you can actually track when we're like your frequency of your brain waves are different depending on the state you're in. When you're actively in focus, you're at this beta wave level. And when you're relaxed and unwinding, it's kind of your whole body slows down and the alpha waves are slower. And then theta waves get even deeper, where you're starting to almost like daydream and do light meditation. And then finally the slowest is these deep sleep, what's called delta waves, where you're in a deep sleep and your body's able to restore energy and restore itself, because you're not burning any energy at these higher levels when you're like beta focused and totally all out doing something that's burning calories, burning energy, right? So there's this cycle that your brain and your body go through, and the waves that the scientists measure show those cycles.
I think it's fascinating. I'm really fascinated with how the brain works and such. Being able to take time to be able to get yourself into those places where you can meditate and daydream and be creative, and of course rest well. So important. Okay, so now next we got to talk about purpose. You can't leave me without talking about purpose.
Yeah, so of course. And by the way, I am a big believer of purpose in the corporate environment, because I know you advocate for that too. I mean, you said it in the beginning in your intro, right? A happy, healthy employee is a more productive employee. So it's kind of strange, but for my companies, most companies I worked for 20 something years were customer first. I'm 100% employees first. Like my company exists to create jobs for people and let them fulfill their lives. and then we figure out how to serve the customer next. So I think for purpose, let's go to the ZenScore question. So the ZenScore question is, I feel guided by purpose spiritually and personally, and I'm committed to serving others and making the world a better place, right? Pretty straightforward. So rate yourself on whether you feel like you have that, right? And then the practices you want to get into are things like philanthropy. Obviously, I support, do you support a local community and charities through some kind of involvement, right? Then there's the planet, right? Do you take action to protect the world the scarce resources that we all share, right? Mentoring, right? There's super great purpose in coaching, tutoring, mentoring other people. Are you a person of integrity? Are you spiritual? Do you want to leave a legacy for your family? Do you have creative expression? Is that your purpose, to bring joy and art into the world? And do you feel yourself connected to some greater purpose, right? So these are all dimensions or objectives of having a purposeful life, whether it's the planet, other people, your family, greater cause. You can find purpose in so many things.
Mm-hmm. So true. And I just want to go through this briefly, Bill, because I know when I'm out speaking and I ask people, how many of you know your purpose? And it usually is, maybe 3% of the crowd, mm-hmm. maybe 5%. And then people feel bad that they don't know their purpose. I'm like, no, this is not about feeling bad, but they don't know where to start. And they don't know really how to access it. So let's just talk briefly. You offer 5 steps to really discovering and embracing your purpose. Let's talk about those. Starting with reflecting on your values and passions. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, most people have something they've become good at or are naturally good at, and are excellent at, and they can share with others, whether it's a talent or knowledge, so come up with a purpose that's aligned with kind of who you are and what your talents are. I mean, that is the one of the first steps. Now, interesting that there's one expression around follow your passion for careers, which is a little tricky because, if your passion is music and it's hard to create a life and career. Not all of us could be musicians, right? Or professional athletes. So you have to kind of balance, your passions that you may be able to address outside of work, and then passions that you could actually create in work. So I'll give you an example of how you can create a passion. I was never passionate around marketing. I never knew I was going to go into marketing, right? But what ended up happening over time was I actually became pretty good at it, and then better and better. And then I started realizing, oh my gosh, I'm helping this company grow revenue. And now we're hiring 200 more people. And now we're going public. Like all of a sudden now my excellence, my purpose has become to help, this company and all the people around me have a place to work and create this large working community. That's amazing, right? So you can become excellent at something and making and being able to use that for a bigger cause, that will give you some purpose beyond kind of the purpose you were born with.
That's a beautiful way to situate it, Bill. Thank you. Let's grab our last break here. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Bill Zujewski. He's the founder and CEO of Good Life, a company dedicated to helping individuals design balanced, fulfilling lives through the ZenScore system, mobile app, and also his book. Your name of the book is called, once again?
What's your life score?
What's your life score?
Yes.
We've been talking a bit about several of the categories from the life score. After the break, we will continue so that we finish all the rest of them. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As you know by now, this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. If you want to learn more about how we can work together and learn about the Gusto Now Academy for leaders and individuals on various journeys alike, make your way to gusto-now.com and then navigate to the training tab and you'll find more information about the Academy. If you are just joining us today, my guest is Bill Zujewski. He's the author of What's Your Life Score? A playbook for designing your best life. So where we are in terms of where I see the wheel is we're on growth.
Yes.
One of my favorite things to talk about by all means.
G for growth. And so I don't know who said it, but there's a great quote. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? So I'd rather be growing than dying. So anyways, the ZenScore question about how you feel about this area is pretty straightforward. I enjoy learning and constantly invest in becoming better at all aspects of my life, right? So I'm a lifelong learner. I've instilled that in my kids. We're passionate. If we don't know answer to a question, we're finding that answer in the moment because we're just curious by nature. So the habits of the growth score is a little different, right? So it's around a commitment, an approach to each day of investing in personal development, right? It's goal setting, right? Having goals that you have from month to month, year to year. It's having a plan for career development. It's getting feedback from your partner, your family. It's challenging yourself, right? Don't coast in life. You're just going to be unhappy. And, it's about self-awareness of what you have for habits and then just starting to be resilient and reflect on and how you're growing. So those are various kind of practices of having growth in your life. But one it's not a secret, but it's a principle of mine, or a philosophy, I should say, that I really believe in is the secret to happiness, which is having goals and making progress. Think about just in a day. When a day goes by and at the end of the day, I didn't make progress, I wasted the whole day, didn't get anything done in my work or my home or my relationship. I'm like, I feel down, Yeah. But when I have those days or weeks where, oh my gosh, I got this done. I planned a vacation. I met with, these three, I didn't, waste the day gaming or doing something else, or right. You just feel better. You're happier. Right. So I think one of the keys to happiness, progress, right. Which is part of the growth category.
Yeah, no question. And I really want to encourage you listeners and viewers, even though your organization maybe doesn't invest in ways for you to learn and grow, they don't provide programs, I would encourage you to do it on your own. So a couple of things to that is, one is I have many people that I work with that hire us directly out of their own pocket for coaching. They don't wait for their employers to do that. I've seen their careers soar and grow. It's amazing. And them as individuals. And then two, back to Bill's earlier point about, passions, et cetera, and interests and hobbies. I encourage you to go and develop those. I know for me right now, Bill, I take improv lessons. I take storytelling lessons. I take tango dancing lessons, and singing lessons, and they all delight me. They're definitely growing me. So really want to just celebrate the idea of growth. And we also know that a lot of people leave their jobs because they don't feel like they're growing. And there are additional ways that you can cultivate that growth in yourself. So really important to keep growing and progressing. Okay, so the R, is the R for relationships or for romance?
Okay, so in the ZenScore, I thought it was so important. It's the biggest factor that I actually broke relationships, the big R, into 2 questions. So in the ZenScore, it is romance and friendships, and I think those are two separate things.
Okay,
so right. So when you go to let's go to the next question. My partner and I have an amazing relationship, and I am happy with the romance in my life, right? So this is definitely different for every single person. Every person is so unique. Happy with the romance, maybe you're at a stage where it's not as important as it used to be when you were younger, right? Or maybe it's super important because you're looking for, that close, intimate relationship, in the middle of your life or early in your life. So it all depends on where you are here. But it's having that one person that's kind of close to you that you call kind of your life partner. Now, around relationships, there's also a friendship. You have family and friends around you that support you. You can go to and all that. The habits are, what do you need to have relationships? Now, this is people, and I learned this the hard way. I wish someone told me this. Like, relationships don't just happen naturally. You actually have to invest in them. Like, people reciprocate. Like, to get love, you have to give love, right? To get support, you have to give support, right? And to be one-sided and just be a taker and not a giver, you're going to have poor relationships. And I just look back, I have good friendships. I wish I had more like blood brothers, right? Where I gave more. Some people are lucky and have that. And I wish I get invested more in those super close relationships. And I have a great one with my kids and my family and have good friends. But even here though, right, you need to spend quality time. So some of the habits here, right, effective communication, quality time with these people, empathy, right, encouraging them, helping them resolve conflict, expressing love, right, forgiveness, gratitude, knowing how to apologize, having a social circle, right, shared interest in your relationships. There's a lot of, again, there's no playbook or manual, but there's definitely things you should try and do that could kind of improve the quality and the number of your relationships. And if you just ignore it, it's not just going to happen.
To your point earlier about that study that you talked about, I do know that study, and it's such a powerful set of results. You just can't ignore how important relationships are. And then when you look at the isolation and depression epidemics that we're in today, it's an indication that we aren't we're not maybe investing in the quality of those relationships to be able to have the benefit of this good, balanced, healthy life that you're really helping us steward. So I think that's really important that we emphasize this idea of relationships.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I had, I will talk about Momentix, about my other company. So I got 2 going right now. I don't know how each is going to do, but I was struggling at first. I met these 2 gentlemen, friends of my daughter's, in their 20s, and they had this cool idea around saving their ticket stubs from concerts and, games they went to, right? You put them in the fridge or on the shoebox, and they're kind of nostalgic, and they're like, oh, they're digital tickets. There's no version of that to save that. So we created this Momentix app to save your memories and tickets from events. And it did okay, but what we realized people really liked was knowing what events they were going to ahead of time. So then we started sharing what events they're planning on going to or interested in going, and all of a sudden it flipped from a nostalgic event to a social event. And I only bring this up because I found the purpose in now our company is really to help people get in real life. It's called the IRL. I don't know if you heard IRL.
Yeah, sure.
Right. To get these 20-year-olds, these young people out of the virtual world, out of the gaming world, and back in bars and clubs and DJs and concerts and Fenway Park and get them out of the house and connecting with people in real life. Right. So that ends up being kind of the purpose and mission for Momentix that now gives me a reason to work hard for that company beyond just trying to create a revenue stream around a killer app, right?
I love it when you start dancing with something like that and you fall into and recognize, oh, that's what people need and want. I didn't see that, but now I can respond to that. And that's, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, another important part of purpose is being present to what is going on in the world and what do people need and want that you can actually help with. So I love how you shared that. And speaking of the idea of the world of work, the next area is occupation. And I see so many people disconnected on this, Bill. So many people are struggling with, really what they want their work to be or how it's going for them or who it's going well for or not going well for.
Yeah, no, this one is complicated because we talked a little bit about balancing your passion with the reality of having some fiscal responsibility in the world to pay bills and raise a family and all that. So the ZenScore part of it is how you feel about it is I am happy with my occupation choice and direction and enjoy my work, right? So I give the kind of the advice that when you start becoming good at what you do, when you strive for excellence and start feeling the impact of your work, that can become your passion. So I think and it's not rocket science. I think there's a study that you got to put in 10,000 hours to become a master at something, right? So there's no shortcuts here. You still have to have strong work ethic and get that stuff done. But then the habits. Let's get to the what you have to do for having the right occupation. Right, education's important. Some meaning of what you do that adds value to the world, whether it's your company, your peers, your family, right? So some meaning in your job. Mastery, like I said, striving for excellence. Compensation is important. You need to be able to have a job that gives you the funds to do the things you want to do in life. So sometimes, you have to sacrifice working hard. I believe me, when I say balance across those all 8 areas, when I'm working hard, smarter, and so that I'm focused. And I'm getting, and if I have to, I'll get up at 6 a.m. and just start earlier so that I have time at night. But there's no shortcuts here in having, paying attention to all those 8 categories. You still got to put in the time and effort, right? So the other aspects are, how stressed are you in your job? That gets into your manager, the culture. Is it the right culture? Like if you are in a position where every Monday morning you can't even get out of bed because you hate your job so much, you really need to pause and realize how that could be overflowing into all the other aspects of your life and how much harm it could be doing. And people are afraid of change. Career is a big change. But that's one of the biggest changes you can make that could have the biggest impact on those other areas of relationships, leisure, relationship with your wife, all those other things. So it's not the most important thing, right? I try to say it's all balanced, but it's one of the 8, occupation.
Really important to get it right and get it well. Well, we're out of time to talk about any of the additional ones here, but let me give you a chance to close the conversation, Bill, and how you'd like to. The show's listened by people around the world. What would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, sure. It's so funny. The last one, and not that we're going to skip, is wealth, because it's probably the least important. So that's great. At least it's like almost symbolic, right? People are obsessed that like the only metric out there, and I was frustrated with this, that people have for their lives is their wealth, right? Their homes, their cars, their assets, and it's not a great metric. So I hope you heard here that I'm trying to create a metric that's not just about money, that it's a way to assess yourself and score your life in these other 8 areas. So I don't know if everyone has the engineering and loves the accountability of a number. Maybe the younger kids, but we live in a gamified world. Maybe they'll appreciate kind of being like at a 70 and trying to get to 90 or whatever. But yeah, that's what I'll leave with people with. Check out my website, goodlife.com. You could download the app there. Go to Amazon, search for Bill Zujewski or What's Your Life Score, find my book, and see what you think of the system and the concepts.
Well, I appreciate so much you coming on Working on Purpose, Bill. It's been great to get to know you, read your book, download your app. It was awakening for me, and I know it will be for our listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for being on Working on Purpose.
Thanks, Elise. It was great.
We will see you next week for yet another nourishing and inspiring conversation on this program, where we bring on thought leaders to advance the conversation on creating destination workplaces, inspirational leaders, and people that can be fulfilled in their work. We'll see you there.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.